takes everything you've got.
Takes everything you've got.
From all your worries, sure would help a lot.
Would that help a lot, Craig?
Wouldn't you like to get away?
Wouldn't you like to get away?
All those nights
Hold on a minute, this wasn't what I was expecting.
in the
I
middle,
always have a fucking meltdown these days at the start of the show, don't I?
cat up
And
by
at the
his
middle, and at the end.
tail, and your third fiancé
Gets the
didn't
chorus.
show.
Let's get this over and fucking done with. This is show business.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're all
Welcome, Craig. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here.
all the same.
You want to go where everybody knows your name. Do you want to go where everyone knows your name?
I don't know, it could be awkward, couldn't it?
Mr. Call.
Could get
Right,
annoying.
everybody, here we are once again for a Safe Place podcast, and this week is going to be probably the most revolutionary show that we've ever put together in terms of helping people understand, but not only understand, heal. Fucking heal. Really, genuinely heal from something that we call shame. Now, shame, as much as I've been researching it, I've realised that actually the root cause of most people's issues comes from developing complexes as a result of feeling the sensations of shame, right? Interestingly, if you look at human beings evolutionarily, every single emotion that we have is ultimately wired for our longevity and survival. There is no accidents in terms of emotions. For instance, I'm walking towards a main road. Craig simply says, Andrew, why don't you close your eyes and cross into the busy traffic? What sensation do you think my body, my unconscious, would immediately fill my experience with? Anxiety, fear. So that energy, that discomfort, that sensation of anxiety, as awful as it feels, is actually trying its best to move me away from the perceived threat, to take care of me. But because it feels bad, we actually make almost an enemy and want to move away from our own anxiety to a degree, which actually makes the anxiety worse. And what we want to try and get across on this podcast is almost about some way of trying to develop a much more of a relationship of understanding towards your emotions in a way that can alleviate the discomfort and the energy that's attached to them. So, for instance, shame. Well, I can see, Andrew, how my anxiety is there to protect me. It stops me getting run over. It stops me walking into traffic. But how the fuck is my shame trying to protect me? I go to parties and I instantly feel that really uncomfortable fight or flight shaminess that's filling my whole body, and it just makes me want to withdraw. It makes me want to go home early. It makes me make excuses for the reason why I have to turn up late and go home early. It also makes me have reasons and excuses to the reason why I couldn't turn up. It does everything to make me look in the mirror and hate myself. It makes me believe I'm a piece of shit and worthless. How the fuck, Andrew, is that helping me? Well, guess what, motherfuckers? It is, and we're going to explain why.
Have you got the answer?
Right there. We have got the answer.
Woo! He's back, baby. Andrew Murray is back.
I'm finally completely thawed out from the hibernation I've been in, and now my cognitive functions are optimally running online, and I am back. And this is the shame. I was speaking to a client in the week, a lovely man, still overwhelmed with shame, seems functional, got a successful job, but is always carrying this deep sense of shame, and he can consciously, rationally see how he's a nice person. But emotionally, he feels that cloudiness and ugliness and disgustingness of what we call shame as a sensation. It feels, if you was to imagine now, any time in your life where you felt embarrassed or felt ashamed, that energy feels like that. You want to hide behind a blanket or disappear under a rock. That very sensation of shame is driving an energy. It's almost started a magnetic pull to want you to withdraw and isolate. Now, interestingly, this great guy, he went to some type of Catholic school, lived in a different country, and the priests abused him physically and emotionally. And he was 8 years old. And one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this story, he said to me, he said he loves his mum and dad, and he didn't want to tell his mum and dad because he was afraid of what the consequences could be. And anyway, the abuse got that prolific. Eventually, he told his mum and dad, and they walked to the priesthood school with him, confronted the priest, and the priest walked behind him, he said, and he placed his hand on the little 8-year-old boy's shoulder, and he went, "Tell your mum and dad that you're making this up." And he said in that moment he felt an overwhelming sense of fear and realised he couldn't. And he said, "I've been making it up." And he says what really hurt as well is the next day his dad put a hamper together of chocolates and wine to give to the priests. Right? Now, interestingly, he's felt that sense of shame all of his life, and he wants to get away from it because it feels so uncomfortable. Understandably, he wants to grow, he wants to heal, and he seeks therapy to try and not feel shame. And that's the fucking problem. Because I said to him, let's imagine you never had shame in those moments when you was abused and humiliated psychologically, emotionally, physically, where you felt like you was the main person that was physically abused, and you always questioned why the other boys didn't get as much as abuse as you did. Let's say that you didn't have that emotion, that unconscious emotion, that sensation that come up and made you feel so shit about yourself. That feeling of wanting to isolate, that feeling of wanting to get away from that crowd, the feeling of wanting to hide under a rock. I said, if you never had that feeling, you'd have probably fought back. You'd have probably shouted and stuck up for yourself. And what would have that done? It would have got 10 times worse, the abuse. So the very feeling of shame, as uncomfortable as it was the only true fucking friend that you had that came in, filled your body with that energy of withdrawal and discomfort and needing to isolate to try and limit as much as possible the abuse that could come your way. Now, how fascinating is that?
It's a little bit like trying to get you through it, isn't it? It's your mental. So just like you burn your arm and your arm comes away, the mental side is trying to drag you away from reality and such, and create an environment where you just get through it.
Yeah. So what we need to be able to do is to heal. Now, it was great for him in that moment because it was like, oh my God, he'd managed to, for the first time in his life, actually feel some bond towards his shame. Not an unconscious resistance of ever feeling it again. He felt some sense of the developing of a relationship towards it.
Was this the first time in the session that he'd ever felt this?
The first time he'd ever felt it, yeah.
You made him look at it from a different perspective, didn't you?
Look at it from a different perspective. But for me, this is what's most important. I could be wrong, but I said to him, these aren't perspectives. It's truth. That's exactly what's happening in the body. When they observed apes as human beings was evolving, if you look at the beta males that get close to the alpha males, as soon as there's any type of potential conflict, you'll see the beta male's head drop and it will cower and it will lower its body. We have no doubt that ape is feeling shame, and that shame is literally reducing the probability of that ape being hurt. It's a survival response to protect the ape. So this isn't perspective. This is truth. We're not playing around with, okay, just write down 10 reasons why you are worthy and trying to manipulate the body. The body's going, no, fuck you. I have literally evolved over hundreds of thousands of years and I know how to keep you safe. And you ain't going to bullshit me into believing I'm worthy. I need to feel like I'm worthless so I never get hurt in that way again. The body will not trust the mind. The mind isn't powerful enough to try and manipulate the body into trying to convince the body that it's worthy now. So what we need to be able to do is go into the feelings and the sensations and begin to feel a connection towards them. A true connection. Remember, as little kids, when you've been going through this shame, and everybody's been through shame, and everybody's carrying some unconscious shame to some degree from some experience that they had with those beautiful people that we called mum and dad, who were just as shame bound as us, which were carrying complexes which unconsciously inflicted us with the same sense of shame. But when we're talking about moving forwards, it's how do we now learn to begin to build a relationship with shame? And for me, the way we do it is when we go back to that same reflex. If someone comes up to you every day, think about it like this. If I go to raise my hand to Craig, he's naturally going to flinch. He hasn't consciously thought with his rational mind, I need to flinch. His unconscious is far quicker and far more intelligent, and it's been hit 1 billion times through every experience of every ancestor that's gone through something horrific or dangerous in every life that was lived before Craig, and that is wired into his genome. So in that moment when I raise my hand quickly, there's an absolute sense of discomfort in Craig that literally will create a flinch, or he'll punch me back and hit me in the gob. 2 defense mechanisms. So to shame, the way to resolve it is to respect your shame, to understand it, to feel a sense of compassion to it, that this shame was taking care of you better than your fucking mum and dad. If you was being abused by your mum and dad and your shame was withdrawing you and making you spend a long time in your bedroom, it was doing that to make you least possible get hurt anymore by them. That shame has been there for you from the moment you was born, an unconscious algorithm and defense mechanism that is inside of you that was protecting you before mum and dad was. So how does Betty, who's now 65 and she's crippled with shame, which is a really difficult thing because we're looking at 2 things, 2 survival responses going into conflict here. One survival response is, I need to make sure Betty feels a low sense of self-worth every day. So Betty never goes out freely and gets hurt and humiliated in the same way again. That's how my shame will protect Betty. Shame being the thing that's there, a child's best friend in a moment when the world has become dangerous or humiliating or unsafe. So Betty's in a house, but guess what? She's got another instinct, and it's the instinct to build connection, to feel like you're wanted and part of a crowd, because there's another instinct hardwired into Betty's survival, which means it pushes her towards this feeling of wanting to feel like she fits in, wanting to have people around her. Because the safety in that, when you weren't part of the tribe, when you was ostracised or alone, there was more likely chance you was going to run out of food or be eaten. So it's a survival instinct that's written into your genome to build connection. From a rational perspective, from an experiential emotional perspective, it just feels lovely when there's people that you have things in common with and you share the same interests and you can talk. And that conflict between her shame, which she's trying to help us survive, and the very part of her that wants to connect to people to survive, creates a type of neurosis where Betty just feels so frustrated and upset, and it even adds to even more shame. I like people, I want to be around people, but I feel so awkward around people and I don't make those connections, and now I feel even more ashamed, which energises Betty to even more withdraw, and the more she withdraws, the more she gets depressed because she's going directly against the instinct to connect and build connections.
Wow. People listening at home will find it very difficult to understand how you can talk about shame with such intent that you are telling the truth. They will not understand how you can really, or both of us can really talk about emotional feelings so openly, because it's kind of a place we don't go in everyday conversations. Now, luckily, this guy, I'm guessing, went to therapy and luckily knew what his shame was. Some people at home, if you think of shame and have you been shamed, your ego might be so clever you won't even remember that bad memory. It can be buried inside, can't it?
100% buried. It gets repressed or suppressed.
Now I thought of a way that people could do what you say. Andrew's telling you to feel possibly one of the most worst feelings in the world, where your ego just wants to run away, it wants to isolate, it doesn't want to go to that party, it doesn't want to go around people. And he's telling you to flip this, accept it and acknowledge it. Now I'm thinking the story of the chap who said it was abuse, you might actually not get down that rabbit hole straight away when you start to think of shame and do I have any problems? Your earlier things would be minor things, so it would come out in your behaviours.
You're making me feel a little bit ashamed now because you're talking to the audience at home, to the camera, and you're making me feel a little bit insignificant.
Well, I'm sure you'll get over it, Andrew.
Well, I absolutely will get over it. Now, people want to not feel bad, don't we? That's like the most basic thing of psychology. But unfortunately, the way the unconscious protects you and keeps you safe and tries to optimize your sense of survival, it puts survival as a priority over how well you feel. That's the incredible thing about the unconscious. The only thing it truly cares about is you surviving. And if that means it's going to fill you with shame so you don't get completely hurt from a scary, unsafe external environment, it's going to do that because it prioritises survival and longevity over Betty feeling great today. But we want to try and help Betty feel great today, don't we? And the way to begin to do it for me, if we're looking at that healing journey, is we need to begin to feel the sensations of shame initially. Now, this is quite a groundbreaking type of therapeutic framework here. And what we're trying to really do is, if you imagine now going somewhere like Barcelona and you look at a beautiful cathedral, anyone that goes out into the outside world and has some sort of a hobby and looks at things and enjoys understanding things, how they work, must begin to start to turn inwards and look at the architecture of their own minds, how their own minds formulate emotions and sensations, and what the actual meaning and purpose of that is. Because if you truly want to escape mental health crises, you need to fundamentally learn exactly the architecture of your own mind. And one thing that I am convinced of is the more I begin to understand the architecture of my own mind, the more I realise is that my unconscious, my fears, my worries, my anxieties, my shame, my guilt are all highly intelligent, caring, compassionate parts of myself that get ignited in moments of crises or uncertainty or unsafety to best possibly increase my chances of survival. And if I can fall into that energy and rather than make an enemy out of my emotions and actually begin to walk towards the discomfort of them with the intuitive sense that they're there and they're trying to take care of me, and learn to feel them and learn to breathe with them and really be vulnerable, because it's very triggering to do it, but really open yourself and learn to slowly open yourself up to that vulnerability, you begin to heal. But it takes time and it takes effort, and it also takes really good people around you that actually want and accept you for the level or the speed in which you're healing, not pressurising you, letting you go at completely your own pace. Not, I haven't seen you in ages, Betty, and you're not a good friend because you don't come out. Well, let's really try and understand better, and let's give Betty exactly what she wants. Let's tell her that we love her, tell her that we're going to be here no matter how long it takes, and help her through it rather than projecting our own sense of rejection onto Betty because Betty hasn't came out with us. It's like, understand what's really going on, dig deeper, go deeper and understand it.
Well, you said a lot of things there that I think somebody at a certain awareness level will definitely grasp and get if people out there doing the work. I've got a little story for you that I think might help those people who are a bit kind of more irrational. They have the shame and the guilt and they just do the bad behaviours and they think that's just life. They'll never change. What about this? Tell me if you like the sound of this. You have a smoke alarm in here, Andrew. If there's a raging fire...
Where? Are you speaking metaphorically, or there's not a smoke alarm in here, is there?
Metaphorically.
Okay, then.
There's a raging fire and it goes off. It alerts you, you survive. The smoke alarm you're very pleased with. It's done its job. Now, another time, you light a candle, you blow out the match, the alarm goes off again. Thinks it's a raging fire. Inside you, every day, there's a smoke alarm going off, sometimes telling you there's a raging fire when there's
Yes.
you've just blown out the matchstick, haven't you?
Yeah.
And if you can be aware when this happens to do what you say, connect with what's going on before or even when it happens, you might just react, just say what you
You
want to
will
say.
react initially, yeah.
But then if you go back and look at this, whether it's an hour later, a day later, you can actually really process what was it about that scenario that brought out the raging fire, because really it was just a lit candle. And that's for me how you, over in time, you can start to get closer to the big ones, like certain times you've been shamed.
You love getting closer to the big ones, don't you? I always innuendo it in some homo way at the end, and ruin everything. Right, so because it's my favourite song and it's our first podcast in the bar, what do you think of the new studio, Craig? Now, we've had a new studio for the past 3 of our new episodes. We've had one studio in the summer house, one studio in the house, and now one studio in the bar. So what are you thinking about this studio? Is this better than the other 2 studios? Which one do you feel the most comfortable with?
I have to say that I like the house, the big roaring fire in the background, but if you get a nice roaring fire in here,
Boring.
This will be the one.
Now, let me finish with the Cheers song, because after all, Betty does want to go where somebody knows her name. It's just that her body doesn't want her to go where somebody knows her name, because her body learnt that people that knew her hurt her. But the other instinct of wanting to connect and build relationships to feel safe, that soul, that aspect of her true nature, wants that lovely place to go where everybody knows her name. Everybody's glad you came. You want to be where you can see people are all the same. Yam want to go where everybody yam knows yam name. Sing it, come on.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows
Come
your
on, Better.
name.
You come and sit next to me, Better. I hope she don't fucking stink a piss.
Always glad you came.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
You wanna be where you can see the troubles all around the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where
Come on, Better.
Tune in next week when Andrew will tell us about the session with the priest from the same story.
That's not funny.
I thought you'd help anybody. I thought you'd help anybody.
Goodbye, everyone.
making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came.